Ladies and gentlemen, minasan, most welcome to this symposium on industrial transformation and circular economy for future competitiveness. My name is Michael Jacob. I'm head of the Science and Innovation Office at the embassy here in Tokyo, one of 6 offices around the world showing the importance Sweden puts on Japan and Japanese collaborations. The mission is to bring our research and innovation systems closer together and to bring also competitiveness for both our countries in this process. Today we are hoping to have a good discussion that also can spur further connections between actors in Sweden and in Japan to see how we jointly can bring forward solutions that the rest of the world also would like to have. Today's event is also co-organized with our friends at the Japan Innovation Network, with the Research Institutes of Sweden and with Business Sweden here at the embassy in Tokyo. It is held in a hybrid format, and we would of course have liked to invite all of you for physical participation. But of course, with the current circumstances, it's not possible. We can also see that it's a big interest also. So even though we have a big auditorium that is Corona safe today with distance, we would not have been able to fit even half of all participants in the auditorium today. Some words about the setup. We have simultaneous interpretation. Those of you physically present in the headset, channel 1 is Japanese and channel 2 is English. And for you who join online, there is a function in Zoom at this globe type of icon. We will have some welcoming speeches. Today, we are very happy to also have a presentation of Japan's green growth strategy from the Ministry METI. We will have some presentations from the Research Institutes of Sweden, RISE, and some case studies of green solutions from startup, scale-up companies in Sweden. Then we will have a panel discussion and followed by a Q&A session. Q&A session both here from you attending physically and you attending online. Please send in your questions. This you can do at any time during the symposium. So with this, I'd like to again say welcome and let's start the symposium. And I invite our ambassador, Per-Erik Högberg, to give some introductory notes.
Thanks very much, Michael, and friends online and the friends here in the auditorium at the Swedish Embassy. It's so great to see you. Pioneer the possible and transformation of industry and the economy. Yes, we need to change. We know that, and we know that human beings have always been challenged by the future. If we go back in history books, it's always been the case. What do we do? Do we conserve? Do we move forward? We meet at the Swedish Embassy during the Nobel Weeks. We are a very proud nation of science, research, and innovation, and we're very happy to see so many Nobel laureates from Japan, and we look forward to more Swedish-Japanese cooperation in this. Before we go ahead today, I just got in my hand this morning from a Japanese friend some new surveys from the Pew Research Institute that I thought was so interesting to think about. The climate changes we are facing and our demand and our need for sustainability changes, how will that affect the economy? The Swedish people see that 51% of the Swedish people think that it will mostly benefit our economy. It gives us opportunities. It's a possibility to come up with new ideas. In the Japanese survey, it was only 19% of the Japanese public who thinks that this will be something that can benefit the economy. Interesting, we can have a whole seminar and a discussion why this is the case, but I think still we need to talk about exactly why we are here today. That is Swedish business, Swedish industry, Japanese business, Japanese industry, and science and innovation in our two countries can cooperate to do exactly what the Swedish people apparently see a bit more clearly than the Japanese, that these are possibilities. The glass is not half empty, it's half full. I think with more research, more science, more innovation, more forward-leaning companies, we can see the future in a bright way. And I think Japan and Sweden can do this together. I look forward to this seminar today. And in the future, I very much look forward to a joint Japanese-Swedish Nobel Prize in one of the sciences. We will see when that happens. But very welcome, warmly welcome, and look forward to our discussions, later our reception for those of you who are here, and not least for all the industrial successes Japan and Sweden we will see. Thank you very much and very welcome.
Thank you very much for this, Ambassador. I'd like to invite Hiro Nishiguchi to the stage, CEO of Japan Innovation Network, who also earlier this year signed a collaboration agreement with the Research Institutes of Sweden concerning innovation.
Ambassador, thank you very much for your very kind welcome to all of us. But I would like to say a few words in Japanese. 今日ご参加の皆様、本当によくいらっしゃいました。私は3分間だけですね、なぜ日本はこのジャパンイノベーションネットワークはスウェーデンと緊密に連携をしているのかという説明をしたいと思います。まず、スウェーデンとはこの6年ほどずっと一緒に仕事をしています。で、どこでスウェーデンと非常に近くなったかっていうと、私が日本を代表して国際交渉と原案を作成しております産業史上初のイノベーションマネジメントシステムのデザインワークです。これは ISO の56002という形ですでに発行されている内容なんですが、いわゆるほとんどのマネジメントシステムはリニア、直線的な活動をどううまく組織内でやるかというマネジメントシステムがほとんどなんですが、イノベーションマネジメントシステムはノンリニア、行ったり来たりの試行錯誤を前提としたマネジメントシステムという意味で非常に画期的です。で、その交渉の中で私はスウェーデンの代表団が非常に素晴らしいコメントをしているのを何度も会いました。正直すごいなと思いました。で、よく聞いてみるとエリクソンとかボルボとかそういったスウェーデンを代表する大企業はすでにこういう考え方で、まさにマネジメントを行い世界市場で戦っているということを知りました。もう一つ私たちは2016年から、UNDP 国連開発計画と一緒にですね SDGs はイノベーションの機会であるという考え方で SHIP SDGs ホリスティックイノベーションプラットフォームというオープンイノベーションプラットフォームを運営しています。で SDGs という言葉がまだそれほど知られてなかった2016年から一緒に仕事をしてきて、この国連システムと仕事をしてきたんですが、そこで知ったのが、実はスウェーデンというのは SDG の達成でいうと、常に1位か2位。1か2位、大して差はないんですね。常にトップです。で、先ほどお話ししたイノベーションの分についても、この後ですね、おそらくライズのピーターさんが話されますが、常にトップ層にいます。つまり、イノベーションの世界でトップであり、SDG の世界でトップをぶっちぎりで走っているスウェーデンという国は、じゃあ何が違うのか。やはりですね、私の見るところ、個人個人が頑張るだけじゃなくって、国家レベルでも企業レベルでも、こちらにございますようなイノベーションマネジメントシステムの考え方を持って、システムとして やると。で、システムとしてやるというのは、別にシステムが結果を生み出すというよりは人がやるんですが、人の創造性や、やる気をですね、むしろ国として、あるいは組織として、進めていくということに非常にですね、熱心である。この間、マイケルさんから聞いたのは、幼稚園の時代からコラボレーションすることを普通に教えているということも伺いました。ということで、今日私はぜひですね、今日この非常に短い時間ではありますが、明らかに、面白いことをやっているスウェーデンという国があり、でその皆さんの直接の声を、大使閣下も交えた形で直接伺えるのは非常に素晴らしい機会だと思いまして、今回皆様をお招きしております。ということで、ぜひ皆さん楽しんでこの時間を過ごし、で何かを学び、できれば一緒に何かができるといいなと、つまりスウェーデンと日本で何か一緒にできればいいなと私も思っています。どうもありがとうございました。
Thank you so much for this, Nishiguchi-san. And I would like to mention also that to the audience here that you are the first Japanese person who is certified in innovation management. With this, I'd like to welcome Meti to the stage, Kihara-san, a long experience from Meti and also from the University of Tokyo, as well as Cornell University. Please, Kihara-san.
Thank you, Dr. Jacob. Yes, Gott efter mitta. Jag heter Shinichi Kihara from Ministry for Economy, Handel, Industry. Please allow me to speak in English from here. His Excellency Ambassador Per-Erik Hägberg, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to express my sincere gratitude for this opportunity to participate in this symposium, post-COP26 industrial transformation. I remember my visit to your beautiful country in 2001. Japan and Sweden both inherit beautiful nature, and our people have harnessed it and enjoyed living with it for a long time. Also, both countries respect sophisticated technology and innovation, which has functioned as a strong engine for growth of both of our countries. And today, given the pressing need to address climate change issue and sustainable growth, Japan and Sweden are the perfect match who can jointly contribute to solve this global agenda. In that sense, Japanese people were very proud and excited to see the Nobel Prize ceremony for Dr. Manabe for his frontier study on climate change modeling. Sweden had set its ambitious target of net zero greenhouse gas emission by 2045. And similarly, in the end of last year, Japan declared the goal of achieving our carbon neutrality by 2050. Moreover, this April, we announced our goal of reducing the greenhouse gas emission by 46% by 2030 and continuing our strenuous efforts towards 50% reduction. As a leading technology country, Japan will realize robust growth while steadily implementing climate change measures. We will create a virtuous cycle of the economy and the environment. And I was interested to listen to ambassadors' data about this attitude, perception by both countries. And I can only say that this dramatic change only happened about this time of last year. So it's only 1 year. From government perspective, this was a revolutionary change of way of doing policy. So most of the time, government people tends to be very incremental, step-by-step, safe approach. But this carbon neutral target is such a ambitious target. So target first. So we in the ministry, policymakers has to stretch a lot. We are thinking from scratch. What are the best policies? How we can facilitate innovation? How we can facilitate finance? And I think the same thing is happening right now in every corner of business community as well. So please have that server again around start of next year, and we will see some dramatic change, I hope. Yes, and you can see this very crowded slide. This is a green growth strategy. Under this philosophy, government of Japan formulated the green growth strategy last December and further updated this June. And it also includes detailed policy measures. And based on the strategy, we will introduce all policy measures to support companies' challenges on innovation and investment decision towards a new carbon neutral society. And we also launched a 2 trillion yen Green Innovation Fund that continuously support development of 14 key technologies throughout R&D stage and demonstration stage over the next 10 years. Technology includes hydrogen, supply chain, offshore wind, fuel ammonia, battery, digital infrastructure, and carbon recycling. Please see in detail on our homepage. It's full of so exciting technologies in there. Next slide. And here I would like to focus on the carbon recycling, one of today's theme. As we cannot eliminate CO2 emission coming out from thermal plants, industry sector in the immediate future, we need solution to handle these CO2 coming out. So under the carbon recycling concept, we treat CO2 as resource. And once separated and recovered, the CO2 will be recycled and turned into materials like chemicals, fuels, and concrete. We turn CO2 into valuable products instead of throwing it away. The next slide. And METI launched the Carbon Recycling Technology Roadmap in 2019. The roadmap sets technology development in 3 phases up to 2050. It also divides products into 2 groups. The group 1, the early harvest group, are the high value added materials like polycarbonate, biojet fuels, and rolled curb blocks, which are expected to spread from 2030s. The group 2 are high demand commodities like olefins, BTX, which are expected to spread from 2050s. Next slide. And I'd like to showcase some of the carbon recycling technologies. On the left is the environment-friendly concrete. It uses special admixtures instead of cement, and this absorbs CO2. So as the more you produce, the more you absorb CO2. It is already in use for roadblock and form work, and we will develop technology to have the cost down and also expand applications. The top right is a polycarbonate using CO2. A Japanese company developed and commercialized this technology already. In 2019, the capacity to manufacture the polycarbonate reached 790,000 tons. This is about 17% of the world's total manufacturing capacity. So technology is coming, and we want to develop this, implement, and commercialize this. And I hope many Swedish technology can combine together and develop even more. So climate change and sustainability is a difficult challenge for human beings. And it is essential to bring together the wisdom of the world to discover solutions and to open up new future. There's large potential for Japan and Sweden's collaboration for accelerating technology innovation. I expect Japanese and Swedish private sectors participating in today's event will find joint opportunities and play active role. Government of Japan is committed to provide support to strengthen our partnership and contribute to secure and sustainable future of Japan, Sweden, and the world. Thank you very much. Tack för er.
Thank you very much for this most interesting presentation, Kihara-san. It is clear that we have several areas that are of joint interest between Japan and Sweden, and that we have a huge potential for collaborating and increase our competitiveness to the rest of the world. Before I give the word to the Research Institute of Sweden, RISE, I'd just like to mention a few words about Sweden with overall words. So Sweden and Japan are similar in size. Sweden slightly larger, but population-wise, we are about 1/4 of the size of Tokyo metropolitan area, so about 10 million people. Sweden and Japan, we invest about the same amount, the same share of GDP in R&D. So we are two of the world's most knowledge-intensive countries. One difference between our countries is our exports. So Sweden, about almost 50% of our exports, of our GDP is exports, whereas you in Japan, you have a large home market. For Sweden, this our dependence on export, that means that we need to deliver products and services that are world-class. We rank high in different type of rankings, not least innovation. In European Innovation Scoreboard, we have always ranked #1 among the EU countries. We are #2 globally in the Global Innovation Index, and also in competitiveness, we are #2. We're very happy also to host the Nobel Prize. And a final slide here just to show that we have also very many multinational companies in Sweden in very many different areas and fields. Some of these companies, or a lot of them, are maybe 100 years old or older, so they have a tradition to re-innovate themselves continuously to stay in the forefront. We also have a very vibrant startup scene that interacts also within our innovation system. And with this, I'd like to give the word to the RISE Institute. So first we will hear Dr. Peter Alberius giving a presentation of the RISE Institute, and this will be followed by Dr. Johanna Mossberg, who is Deputy President for Biorefineries and Energy. And Peter Alberius, he is heading the international collaboration, the business-oriented collaboration there. So over to you in Sweden, Peter and Johanna.
Thank you very much, Michael. I hope you hear me in Tokyo. Good afternoon. This is Peter Alberius speaking from Stockholm, and I'll give a brief introduction to RISE, Research Institute of Sweden, or as we call it, a very important international partner for innovation and competitiveness. So RISE, Research in Sweden, is a non-profit industrially-oriented research institute under the Swedish government, under the Ministry of Enterprise and Innovation. And our mission is to promote innovation and competitiveness in industry. And just like Michael said, 40% of our GDP goes for export. So of course, international competitiveness is critical. And that's why we are so happy to talk to you in Japan today. Collaboration is vital for our mutual success. And I would like to stress that through co-creation between industry, academia, and international partners, we will be an important player here, accelerating innovation for sustainable development. And that is, of course, the focus of today's talk. Just want to mention very briefly, 2,800 on staff here at RISE in 5 different areas. We will in particular mention bioeconomy today, but of course there are overlaps with all these other areas, ICT, mobility, safety, build society, and industrial production and materials, of course. All of these topics are now very much lining up for building a sustainable welfare society here in Sweden and elsewhere. Just to stress that we are not a university, we are not a private corporate, we are seamlessly walking between the academic basic research capacities we have here in Sweden and elsewhere, and also with industrial players. And I want to stress that these industrial customers of ours are, of course, world-leading multinationals, as well as fast-scaling companies. And I will come back to, in particular, that in a few slides, the importance for collaboration between multinationals and fast-moving startups. Now it seems like my, yes, please, next slide, please. And I want to stress this is Europe, of course. We are in the upper right corner here in the Scandinavian peninsula. And I want to stress that 1/3 of our activities are international. We collaborate with the best universities globally, as well as the biggest corporates. And important to stress also in this introduction to RISE is that when you as client work with RISE, you own the results, and of course we strictly confidential with whom we work with and on what topics. But of course, a big part of what we are doing is also publicly funded, and in those projects, of course, your participation is public, but the content is still locked in for the corporate. I want to stress our good collaboration with the Japan Innovation Network, JIT. Thank you so much for co-hosting and all and friends. And of course, we are also working with the University of Tokyo's Technology License Office as another important example of collaboration within Japanese ecosystem. So that are 2 collaborations we are very, very happy for and proud of. We look forward to broadening this network, both research collaborations, but also in the public, the private sector. An important asset here at RISE is our focus on testing and demonstration infrastructure. We see 3 slides here, 3 pictures demonstrating examples. The upper right corner is a pilot hall we are actually starting to build as we speak in bioeconomy sector, and Johanna Mossberg will talk more about that investment. The second middle slide is a very important arena for mobility research, of course, on the autonomous driving, but also for sustainable mobility. This testing facility in the west coast of Sweden, where we have the core of Swedish automotive industry is located. The third picture shows an important asset in the bioeconomy field that is a focus on chemistry research and the power of chemistry for example, transforming carbon dioxide and other sustainable sources of carbon for useful products. I also want to stress the importance of this test and demonstration infrastructure for in the area of open innovation. These testing facilities, this big scale research infrastructure is an excellent meeting space for deep tech scale-ups from Sweden to meet the big corporates in different collaboration systems. And we also have an opportunity to co-create the future by demonstrating Japanese green innovations together with established Swedish industry and as a stepstone for European expansion. We think in particular these 2 topics will be stressed in the future discussions with you on the Japanese side. So looking forward to in-person engage in those discussions. The future is now. We are a critical part of the transformation of industry here in Sweden. This is a Swedish map where we see some of the investments we are taking as we speak. We are investing in the state-of-the-art test beds. We have key competencies that we also develop, and we have a very industry-friendly business model. And with that said, I want to just repeat what Ambassador Per-Erik Höglund just said, that we have a very ambitious target for a climate neutral welfare society. And the future of this industry is created as we speak. And with this very brief introduction, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Dr. Johanna Mossberg, who will lead us through the presentation of our capacities in a carbon recycling future of industry. So thank you very much for listening, and I will stay on for the panel discussion, of course.
Thank you very much, Peter. And I will take over the presentation. And just to say that your final quote there with a picture of me, it says, it's a bit bold. Of course, it takes a lot of research and innovation in order to do that, but we believe it's just a matter of ideas and research in order for us to make everything that is fossil today bio-based in the future. So I will have the opportunity to talk just briefly about biorefineries, but also about the carbon economy and carbon utilization and our capabilities and the areas in which we look forward to collaboration. So just to make it quite clear what has already been said, if we talk about the sustainable future, we talk about an efficient carbon economy, and then we have 3 sustainable sources of carbon-rich feedstock. We have, of course, recycling and circularity to keep the carbons in the system for a long time. But we also have the bio-based carbon, which is a new sustainable addition of new carbon to the system. And also, as said, if we also utilize the CO2, where we also have carbon, that can also facilitate both the circularity and faster transitions towards a sustainable future. And I will focus on the 2 to the right, the bio-based economy and connections with carbon economy and carbon circulation. And why do we speak about biorefineries when we speak about this in Sweden? We can say that the biorefineries is the industrial response to a bioeconomy. If we say we're going for a circular bioeconomy, the biorefineries will be the industry response to that. And bio-based resources or bio-based carbons, it provides a range of different feedstocks and also then a possibility of a range of different products. And that can be from the same raw material based on the raw material's unique composition. And it can also be adapted to the feedstock in order to fit a certain process to the feedstock in question, so to say. And the biorefineries have the potential to increase both climate and business benefits of the side streams and residue flows that we have today in society. It's a bit slow, but you can change for me maybe. And when we speak about biomass in Sweden, just to highlight why we do that, we can say that this is a map of Sweden. And if we look at the annual harvest of forest in Sweden, it's 7 times larger than the harvest of forest in Japan. And we saw that earlier that it's approximately the same size. And we can have this large forestry harvest and still have a net growth in our forests. So that kind of gives you the picture of that we have quite vast resources of forest in Sweden that we can utilize. And for the biorefineries, we use the waste and side streams that are from forestry or from industrial processes like sawdust and bark and the branches and tops. And we take those resources that are underutilized today and we upgrade them to new products with higher value. So that's our core strength of the Swedish innovation system to manage biomass resources, and not only forestry, but also lignocellulosic feedstocks from agriculture sector and society circular flows that are bio-based in the core. And you can see just from the map and from the flows up to the left that those are quite vast resources, although limited, of course. So we need to make the most of them and also utilize the bio-based CO2. So I will now just briefly mention some of our key competences that relate to this area. And you can see in Sweden, we would say, I will give you a bit of a smörgåsbord. I think that's also an international word. And it will provide you with a very brief overview of some of our competences and infrastructures. And we look forward to dig more into detail in this in a further discussion with you. So I will say a little bit about industrial biotechnology, chemical and thermochemical biorefinery processes, CCS and CCU, that is the carbon recycling. We put in brackets bio-based, but of course it can be others as well. And also we work with systems analysis and strategic evaluation, just to highlight that. But I will focus on the technical competencies. So again, if you can change for me. If we start with application within the industrial biotechnology, I can mention, like Peter said, that we are now making a large investment in test beds in Sweden. We also call that research infrastructures, because it's research and innovation infrastructures, possibilities for an infrastructure that can be used both by research institutes, academia, but also by industry in collaboration. And we are strengthening this area quite heavily as we speak, with an extra grant from the Swedish government to really push innovation and increase the speed of innovation in this area. And a large part of that investment is directed towards the industrial biotechnology area. And as you can see, we are working with many different applications for industrial biotechnology that ranges from single cell proteins, bioplastics, biochemicals, second generation sugars, but also enzyme and proteins. And we have test beds and research infrastructure more or less for the whole value chains. And that includes like pre-treatment, it includes the hydrolysis step, it's strain development, and we will build a high throughput lab now the coming year. But we also have significant research infrastructure in the downstream processing and upgrading to actual applications. So if we change, now I could change myself, but just to give the example, like if you look into the field of enzymatic hydrolysis and fermentation, just to show you here that we can do the full scale up value chain. We can go from those little small plates all the way up to, with the new test bed that we are investing in, we will have the capability of going up to 10,000 liters in size. So it's a quite large increase in scale up that we have the possibility to follow through all these steps in this area. And with that said, if we move forward past the biotechnology into the chemical processing and in the thermochemical processing, we also have capabilities through the whole value chains. That's the fractionation, the processing step, and also the workup and purification. And you can see that the competences that we have in this area is quite broad, and that goes for both like research expertise, but also for the research infrastructure and pilot and demonstration and lab facilities, all the way from paper chemistry to pharmaceutical chemistry and those ranges. And we also have the industrial understanding. Yeah, and the same way, we have the same facilities for the thermochemical processes. So I will just finish up also saying, like with the carbon recycling and the carbon circle, we also have test beds that we are building for both capture and upgrading of CO2 and purification. So we are also investing in that together with an electrochemistry labs. And this is for support of development of both new materials and processes to increase the efficiency of the capture of carbon, but also for supporting the development of new products based on the captured CO2. And I will just give one example because I'm a PhD, so I would just like to end with a graph just on the next slide. Because sometimes we talk about the bio-based economy and then we talk about the electrofuels economy. But I would just like to highlight that there's a really grand potential when you combine these two. Because if you combine the bio-based processes and you add the electrochemical steps, then you can increase a way higher efficiency. And this you can look at afterwards on the last slide. It's just to show how the carbon efficiency can be raised. That's the level to the left, when you add some electricity input to the process. So if we combine these, we will truly have a carbon efficient economy in the future. And I also think that that is some part of that they will build on in the case examples by Liquid Wind. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for very interesting presentations. We will now move over to two case studies, to companies, and we will begin with Liquid Wind, that is a scale-up company. So I'd like to invite Jesper Edstrand to the stage. Jesper, please.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for inviting Liquid Wind to this very interesting symposium. I would like to share Liquid Wind's journey towards realization of e-methanol facilities around the globe. So let's see if this screen sharing works. Otherwise, you need to shout out. So why do we focus on this issue? We focus on e-methanol for the marine sector primarily. And this is something that is recognized by large organizations like IMO, Maersk, and also Getting to Zero Coalition. Okay, so now you can take the next slide, please. Thanks a lot. So what we're trying to say with this slide is that the IMO and Maersk and also the Getting to Zero Coalition have recognized the need for a greener fuel for the shipping sector. This is something they recognized as a large contribution to the reduction of greenhouse gases. Next slide, please. The concept that we use is like the CCU, and you have heard interesting presentations just recently about how carbon can be recycled. And what we try to do is we use renewable electricity, combine it with recycled biogenic carbon dioxide, and produce e-methanol. We have an ambitious target, and we're planning for our first facility up and running already in 2024 in mid-Sweden, a town called Örnsköldsvik. I will illustrate a little bit more about this particular plant later on in the presentation. One number to keep in mind from this slide is that we try to standardize the flagships. So each flagship are actually producing 50,000 tons of e-methanol. And the benefits with e-methanol is that it is a similar value chain as existing fossil fuel value chains. So it doesn't need to make so much modification or development. So it's a fuel that can start to be used already now. Next slide, please. The benefits of the green fuel is something that has been recognized by the end users. They actually are the one that drives the need for a greener fuel. It's like Amazon, IKEA, and Unilever. And they actually push their shipping organizers, shipping companies to invest in new ships. So what we actually see, and this is recent press releases, is that Maersk order ships, express feeders in Singapore, order ships, waterfront order ships. So the development is here and now, and we think this can increase dramatically. Next slide, please. We cannot do it ourselves. We are a startup. We need good partners. We also want to do this globally, as you saw in the one of the first slides. And we want to make many of these facilities around the globe. So therefore, we have teamed up with strong partners. For the first flagship, we use Worley as EPCM contractor. Siemens Energy are the responsible party for the electrolyzers. Haldor Topsoe is the responsible partner for the reactor or for the e-methanol production, synthesizing. And on the local scale, it is important to have a very good partner that we co-work with and collaborate a lot with. And this is Örnsköldsvik Energy. It's a municipality-owned CHP plant that uses biomass for their heat and steam production. So we capture the CO2 from them via our partner Carbon Clean, and then combine it in the reactor that Haldor Topsoe organizes. Alfa Laval, a Swedish company, have a lot of roles in the heat exchanger for the process. Next slide, please. Ahead of this interesting symposium, we looked what we could say on Japan in particular. And we have Japan on the map for sure. And it is a very interesting and knowledgeable industrial sector based in Japan. And we think that there can be a lot of benefits of combining our plans with Japanese expertise and knowledge, good reputation and good network around the globe. So that I would say, I would start with the last one. I think there are good synergies for collaboration with Japanese companies and future flagships around the globe. Then we also see that it's very interesting with the wind power development in Japan. We learned that there is a roadmap for fixed bottom installations or auction, I would say, for fixed bottom installation for wind power. And we think it's going to be a relevant source for affordable electricity. So finally, we are open to answer questions in the later panel debate, and I will end like that.
Thank you very much, Jesper. We then continue with Northvolt, a Swedish unicorn startup focused on the world's greenest battery, and I'd like to invite Ingrid Karlsson to the stage, who is heading Revolt, an important part here in Northvolt circular economy. So welcome, Ingrid.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I seem to have some issues with starting my video. Perhaps I can get some support there from the technical side. Start my video. Perfect. Here we go. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, perfect. You should be able to see my slides. Good, we are good to go. So my name is Ingrid Karlsson. I work at Northvolt and mainly focus on our business unit called Revolt, working with battery recycling and closing the loop on the battery value chain. And I will tell you a little bit about Northvolt, where we started, where we are today, and where we plan to go in the future. And listening now just to all of your presentation today, I think we can all agree that we are facing some big issues today regarding climate change and pollution. And the fact that, you know, we are already very, very late to act on this. But if we are being innovative, if we are collaborating, and I think from our perspective, most important, if we are working at speed, there are solutions available out there to work with this. So basically, what we would like to do is to move from the carbon fuel base into a cleaner future enabled by electrification. So actually what our founders realized already in 2016 is that there will be a huge global demand of lithium-ion batteries to be able to store energy. And we can see that already now on the market, there is a shortfall of supply and there isn't really enough batteries to provide the customers today or even in the coming years. So what we can see here in the short video was the Gigafactory that we are now setting up in northern part of Sweden in a town called Skellefteå. So this is what it looks like a couple of weeks ago before the snow came into Sweden. Today it's a lot more snow at this site, and construction is ongoing. So volumes is of course important in reaching the global market, right? But at the same time, we want to do this in a sustainable way. So we want to produce the greenest battery on Earth, basically. So what we did, we looked at, okay, so producing a battery, what is the environmental impact? Where do we generate the most CO2 footprint? So we looked at this and came to the conclusion that there are mainly 2 points. So first of all, we have manufacturing, right? We are preparing metal, chemicals. This is a very high energy intense process, contributing mostly to the CO2 footprint. So what we are doing there, we are using 100% renewable energy going into the factory. And I think that is quite unique for Sweden. I'm not sure if you are aware, but in northern part of Sweden, we have a lot of hydropower. So basically, with the site up in Skellefteå, we can provide 100% renewable energy into our manufacturing process. So reducing CO2 footprint significantly. And then looking into the second point here, what else can we do to improve the environmental footprint of our batteries and our products? Going into raw materials. So we have mining of metals and preparing of chemicals and material. So looking at this, back in 2017, we started doing research on battery recycling, working very closely with partners and advanced universities, to be able to develop a process for battery recycling. So with doing this, with reintroducing the metals into manufacturing from end-of-life batteries, we can actually significantly reduce our CO2 footprint even further. So the Northvolt target here is to be able to feed 50% of materials going into battery manufacturing from recycled material. And this is something we would like to be in place until 2030. So I would say it's a pretty bold and ambitious goal, but we are fully committed to do everything we can to reduce environmental footprint of our product. So to showcase a little bit what we are working with today, we have set up a pilot plant for battery recycling in Västerås in Sweden. What you can see here is basically the fractions coming out from the process. You can see the recycled metals to the very right side here. And a couple of weeks ago, we actually announced the production of our first fully recycled battery cell. It's a huge milestone for the team. And I think just to wrap it up a little bit for today, we have been proving our concept, working closely with universities and partners, and now we are really scaling up this industry. So what you're looking at here is the fully scaled battery manufacturing plants, and also with the integrated recycling on site. So we can make sure that we are from the very start building a circular system where we can feed in recycled material into our plants from the very beginning. And even though this is the plant, this is the site, this will not stop here. I mean, we are seeing already now partners, sub-suppliers building a network in this area. And I think going forward, looking at the global demand, there will also be a need of factories all across Europe, but also, of course, outside of Europe's border. So I think that was all for me for now. Thank you very much for listening in, and I'm happy to involve in the panel discussion and answer any questions later on. So thank you.
Thank you so much for this, Ingrid. And with this, we go over to a panel discussion. And at the panel discussion, we'll be having Liquid Wind, RISE, and Northvolt, as well as us here from the embassy. Moderator will be Hiro Nishiguchi-san from Japan Innovation Network. So I give the word over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. And everybody, I think I'd like to have, I would say, discussion by engaging colleagues from Sweden. And instead of diving into specific technologies or themes, I think I would like to talk about, I'd like to really understand the fundamental thinking behind your all activities. And as I think presented at the beginning of this session by His Excellency Ambassador Ulrich, there might be some difference of perspective about between two countries or professionals. But I think actually some people call it diversity. So let us say, let me start by asking one question. Why are you working on these challenging themes? Maybe I'd like to ask Peter, why are you guys working on this very difficult, challenging problems? And let us start from here. Peter.
Well, thank you so much, Hiro, and the team. Yeah, well, this is, of course, first of all, very important for our future of the planet. But more important than that is, of course, also the survival of the Swedish and European and international industry landscape. I think this is room for proving that science and technology can actually solve some of the critical issues while also building business for the future. And we see two very good examples on this panel of the new economy. This already starting to bloom around this critical issue of making good business as well as saving the climate. So I think there are at least three good reasons. It's fun and challenging, scientifically challenging. It's important for the future generation, and it's critical for our future competitiveness.
Thank you, Peter. I'd like to actually ask all of the panelists in Sweden about competitiveness. I think Peter just mentioned the word competitiveness as number three, one of the three reasons. And I'd like to say a few words about competitiveness because I'm also on the board of Global Federation of Council of Competitiveness by connecting many countries. When we hear the word of competitiveness, some people may think that competitiveness is really about beating up others, fighting against others, boxing so aggressively against others. But some people say that competitiveness is really about becoming a leader in the future. So let's say I'd like to start with, let's say, Ingrid. You just highlighted a very interesting, you have just shared a bright future through your presentation. From your perspective, what is a competitiveness for Sweden or for Japan or even for this planet? Any thoughts? Yeah. And after that, I'd like to go to Peter's room, and then I'll go back to Jasper at the end. Okay, Ingrid, please.
I think a very important question that you're highlighting. I mean, for us, it's clear. It's definitely, sustainability and creating green products and reducing environmental footprints. I think this is really the competitiveness that also we can see now. It's not only coming from, regulation or regulatory institutes, it's also coming now from the customers. So we can really see, a global demand of sustainable products to be. So I think this is really, what will be the key going forward.
Thank you. What do you think about how response or even your thought, please? Oh, I think you're muted. I think you're muted.
Yes, just give us a second. Now we're here. Perfect. And just to say that from our perspective, when we see sustainability, and this is a quite rapid transition that we need to do. And in order to do it as fast as we can, I think that we need to combine competences. So we need to connect the incumbent successful industry of today with the new technology developers. And we also need to connect along the value chains, because the business of the future and the value chain of the future will not be the same as today. And for a fast transition, we need to connect the competences and the resources better in collaboration between different actors. And that goes for both successful established industry today and technology developers and up and coming rising companies. So I think that will be a key to connect those value chains in order to make the rapid transition that we need for sustainability.
Are you saying that if we cannot build a new value chain in a new, more sustainable world, we will have less competitiveness? Is it what you're trying to say?
That is what I'm trying to say, and we can see also from examples in Sweden, where we have the most successful and rapid development in the circular and bio-based economy. Many of those examples are industries that work together along new value chains in new types of collaboration, like forest industry with refinery industries and a technology developer in the middle and so on. So I would say that that will be key to sustain competitiveness, in be able to be flexible and adapt how you collaborate for the future that is very different compared to the conditions that we have had up until today.
Excellent. So what you're saying is that the actual new sustainable society may have a totally different value chain, which may have a totally different players, stakeholders, in a unique way connected. And did I hear you correctly?
Yes, that is my view.
Okay, thank you. What do you think about her view, Jasper?
I think this question can be answered by an example. And I think take the example of IKEA. They want to continue to be the leader in the retail for home market products. Okay.
They are very popular in Japan as well.
Good, we like that. In order to stay competitive, they actually see, okay, our products have a carbon footprint. So where can we work? We work on the energy production, we work on the energy distribution. And then they come to, okay, it's more expensive to buy a renewable shipping fuel, but the end consumer price on that renewable fuel will be very low in the total price. So they go to the shipping company, Maersk, etc., and say, we want this. They push that question forward. And then the shipping company come to different potential sellers of renewable fuels and push the question further. So I think this is a way of staying competitive in the long term. And it also imply that people and companies really need to collaborate to fix these actually quite difficult assignments to work with.
Interesting. Okay, Michael is saying that shut up, just close the panel discussion, but I'd like to continue a little for another 2 minutes. And I think last question is that actually, since we are talking about the future, let's talk about our customer in the future. Are we expecting different expectation or demand from the future generations, or they are going to be very similar to what we are right now? What's your view? Maybe one by one, everybody speak up, and then I think we have to move to the Q&A session, I guess. Let's say ladies first, please. Maybe either way. Ingrid, I guess.
Yes. I think I touched upon it earlier. I mean that we are seeing a different demand coming from the customers, right? So I think from sustainability perspective, they will really push the limits here. Definitely. And I think looking at just the battery industry, we are seeing, all of the big automotive OEMs, for example, now shifting towards carbon neutrality in their vehicles and committing to very bold targets here. So I think a close collaboration also with customers, on a global level is needed to reach this together.
Continue as the other woman. But I can say that from my perspective, I think that we will see a different demand, but we will also need policy, because we cannot only rely on the consumers, because then transition won't be fast enough. So we will have to have a dynamic between final consumers, but also for policy and steering the transition. And there, I think industry also have a responsibility to show that it is possible for policy makers to take decisions on policy and to push innovation. So not to forget policy.
Okay, thank you. Customers, policy, and Jasper, what else?
I think it is about collaboration and innovation in that aspect. To meet the customer demands, there's not a lot of need for collaboration to finalize and meet the customer demand, actually.
Thank you, Jasper. Peter?
Brief final statement. Look at fast-moving consumer goods companies and how they tackle the challenge of sustainable ingredients, but also on packaging. They are not happy with the speed and innovation on their supplier chain, so they are taking very bold investment on their own right. So that dynamic is very interesting to be in the core of as we speak. So the epicenter of change is taking place from consumer goods companies together with the policy making that Johanna mentioned. I think this is a very interesting drive from both sides of the spectrum.
Thank you very much. I think over to you, Michael.
Yeah, so thank you very much for the moderation, and thanks to the panel. We now open up for a Q&A session, a short Q&A session, and I'd like to ask in the auditorium here first if we have any questions. But please, Ichiguchi-san.
Yeah, any questions? 質問ある方いらっしゃいますか? Or online questions as well, right? Do we have any online questions, Murakami-san or others? His Excellency has a question.
Thank you. My question is to the Japanese audience, and both online and in the auditorium. You hear the Swedish side talking a lot about the demand from consumers, especially in the consumer goods companies. But I've been in Japan for 2.5 years now. I don't see any consumer demand pressure from a sustainability perspective. Am I missing something, or is this correct? Is it no consumer demand in Japan at the moment when it comes to sustainability?
Ambassador, are you asking to the audience, right?
To you, if
to
no one wants to.
Okay.
And I want a fair answer.
Okay. I'd like to actually answer to you then, Ambassador, in very short. Actually, we have a word of SDGs native, which is really about the younger generation who take these issues for granted. In fact, new graduates from university choosing their new job or employer based upon such a criteria. If companies are not serious, they don't get good employees. And so this is a very serious, actually challenging, actually for the traditional, not changing traditional company. If they like to hire good people, young people, they have to be that. So it's not necessarily a consumer perspective, but also there are so many new so-called SDGs focused or sustainability focused activities. And also even like today, we don't have many consumer goods companies in this audience, but like our convenience stores, they are actually, they are really going through massive no waste food campaign and no plastic bag campaign, and which is really changing the, I think the pressure is from both sides, from corporate side, also from consumer side. So we are pressing each other so to create a little bit better society. And perhaps we don't talk a lot, we don't shout a lot, but I think very steady movement is underway. It looks like, this is my view, by the way, sir. And any,
We have online questions.
Okay.
はい、オンラインから来ました質問を一つご紹介します。サーキュラーエコノミー構築における民間企業の取り組みに対する官との連携形態について、他国と比べてスウェーデンの特徴的な取り組みがあれば共有いただければと思いますということです。
Peter, did you get it? Probably not. What is a specific characteristic of private sector and public sector collaboration in Sweden in the area of this sustainability? How are you guys cooperating better than other countries in this area? Was this question. Peter, did you
we had some issues hearing the sound, but we assume that the question.
There seems to be some connectivity issue. We cannot hear you. Maybe Michael, we can answer.
Was the direct question directed towards us at RISE?
Yeah, because the question was about public-private sector collaboration in the area of sustainability and the circular economy. What is a good thing about Sweden in this area compared with other countries?
Yes, I can say that if we take both the aspect of circularity, but also between public and private partnership, we can say that in Sweden, as Peter highlighted in a bit, we have a long tradition of collaborating between the industry and research institute and academia in quite, we say that we have a quite informal way of collaboration. We can do it in a professional manner, but we are, the culture for collaboration is with a quite low threshold, and also with the industry quite heavily in the front seat, so to say, of collaboration, where industry in research collaboration has access to all the results and so on, just like Peter mentioned. So I would say that kind of informal culture, but still in a very professional way, that's a signature of Swedish collaboration. But if we look into what's special with respect to circularity, then we can say that in the future, if we have a full sustainable economy, it will be a circular bioeconomy. And then the bio aspect of that, we can say there we are very skilled in Sweden, not only looking at circularity, but also looking at when the carbons are bio-based, the processes and the systems and the knowledge connected to that aspect of the circular economy. That is a key competence that we have compared to others if we look into the circular economy. I don't know if that was an answer, but it was given on what we heard of the question, it was a try.
Thank you very much for that, and I can give some perspectives also from more Swedish government point of view. We are of course few people in Sweden, so we need to collaborate more, and government is trying to promote collaboration, not least between academia, industry, and we see also research institutes like RISE have a key role in this. We can also see that we can increase speed by collaborating also, which is a key issue, and this can also help to form the new competitive industry around the world, the fast actors. I think with this, we have to close the Q&A. And I see some waving here.
Yes, we are receiving quite a lot of questions, actually. I just wanted to say that there is one final question or there are a few questions that we will not have time to address, but one question I think laps over to the next final wrap-up session, and that is, how do we, if a Japanese company or corporate is aiming for co-creating with Sweden on the global market, how do we do that? Do we meet at innovation hubs or face-to-face, or how do we best do that? That is one of the questions.
Very good question. Thanks very much to the person asking this. I will soon give the floor to Karsten Grönblad, Sweden's Trade Commissioner here in Tokyo, to give some final words. But before that, I can invite also you who have questions to contact us here at the embassy. We can try to guide you further, or contact our colleagues at RISE also if you have further questions and inquiries. With this, Karsten, I give the floor to you.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor and pleasure to give the wrap-up conclusions and remarks. I'm a very bad, my handwriting is very bad, so I'm always confusing myself when I read them later on, but I hope I can give some notes here, and I'm very impressed about all the interesting presentations and the comments here. And the main question, overarching question, how to be competitive in the mid of an industrial transformation. It sort of gets me thinking to actually the speed in business, and how actually the speed in the business seems to be accelerating, or at least increasing. I don't know how, if you know what the average time span of a Fortune 500 company is. In the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, it was around shy of 40 years. Today, it's around 18 years, and it still is increasing. So in about 5 years, most of the Fortune 500 companies on the list would be new to us. So this increased speed, and also this new type of environment with new change, driven by climate change, and of course the need to have a sustainable business model. So who will be the winners of tomorrow? In my organization at Business Sweden, we work with predominantly tech company or company that has a global edge, both Swedish ones that like to establish or like to business development abroad, or Japanese or other international company who like to develop business or invest in Sweden. And I just want to share 3 reflections of what we have seen has been changing, and companies that are very successful in driving innovation and also adopting to this changing environment. And I think some of them relates a little bit to what we also have heard. One is that sort of the company's competitive space, if you can call it like that, seems to have moved outside the company. If it before was more an inside process to be very lean and efficient, it's now more how you open up and how you actually can build a platform with good partners. And that's quite natural if you think about the comments also that we heard, that business environment with increased speed, and also a need for a diversity of competences, and also things happening very rapidly, making it hard to prognosticate what you need to know, what you need to do, is very hard to build in-house. And thus, it's one of the key competitive advantages if you're able to build up a good network. And if you're successful in doing that, you have good access to sort of best-in-class competence. And you also have a diversity of this competence available. And then, of course, you need to have very efficient and, of course, smooth collaboration process. So success criteria could be, for example, how strong and good relations you have, or how good you are in cooperating. The other one is sort of that innovation also seems to have several locations and more of new value chain, as we also heard. From our point of view, we talk about the orchestra type of approach, where you have perhaps a leading company that takes the lead, but also orchestrate the competences and the partners that they need in order to succeed. So back in days, perhaps it was more that you had innovation at the beginning, and then you added sort of the company functions. Now it's more of an iterative process where you need to do it simultaneously, and you need to develop and cooperate with a lot of partners over a lot of value chains, more or less simultaneously. And lastly, but perhaps also quite naturally importantly, is that if you choose where you innovate based on a purpose rather than from a business objective, will give you a sustainable business idea in the end that will be profitable, but you will also be sure that what you're doing will actually meet the demand if you addressing the societal needs and you develop out of that. So all in all, I think the common denominator is collaboration and to do it and to be open. And as I said, competition is perhaps more about leadership and open up. So from our perspective, please reach out to us, to the embassy, to RISE, to Business Sweden. We will be happy to connect you with the good partners and continue the dialogue as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those words in wrapping up, Karsten. I think it has been a very interesting symposium here. I would like to thank all the audience online as well as physical participants. I think from some conclusions of what has been said is that we have a lot of possibilities together. And co-creation can be a key issue to see how Sweden and Japan jointly can go and try to pioneer the possible and create a future sustainable world and have a leadership there. Thank you very much. With this, we close the symposium.